In today's episode, we're speaking to Chad Price. Chad is a seasonal serial entrepreneur with an impressive track record spanning over a decade. He founded Kettlebell Kings from scratch and orchestrated a remarkable 3-year multi-million-dollar acquisition back in November 2021. Today, it stands tall as a thriving international company, making waves in esteemed Inc. 5000. Let's speak to Chad and find out how he changed his life by changing his mindset. And remember, if you want to upgrade your money mindset, then click on the link www.millionairefoundations.com and watch my free training. Welcome. This is Gull, your money mindset expert. And today I'm so excited. We have the one and only Chad Price. Welcome, Chad.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you.
Chad, everyone's heard your intro. They know how fabulous you are, but please, in your own words, tell everybody what it is that you do.
Well, I mean, I do quite a few things. What I'm working on right now is kind of my book, which culminates my journey. Graduated from Rice University in Houston, went into corporate America like anybody else, I think, trying to find a job. And then I decided, if now's the time, if ever, if I'm going to start my own company. So I started a couple companies with one with my girlfriend, one with my partners. My most notable company became very popular, Kettlebell Kings. I recently got that company acquired. And I culminated that 10-year journey with the book and kind of the life lessons as well as the business lessons I've learned along the way. With my book and with everything else I'm doing, I'm really at a point in my life where it was a clean break, if you will, to kind of close a chapter and open another one. So I'm kind of excited about the promotions of the book, and I've just kind of been touring and talking about that in kind of the next chapter of my life.
Wonderful. So you're currently in the crossroads in terms, okay, so one chapter is ending, well, actually in terms of transition period rather, and you're just entering the new chapter if you are and deciding which direction to go with. And meanwhile, you're just touring with your book, which is amazing, fabulous. And that's what we're going to talk about that in a bit anyway. So get us started. How does a lad, growing up goes into corporate America with an employee mindset and comes out with, okay, no, actually, I want to be an employer as well. I want to be an entrepreneur. Goes in and is widely successful. How does the journey, and it sounds great, and we like to romanticize those sort of stories, and we like to showcase them on movies and books and stuff, but the hardship that goes behind it, the hard work that goes behind it, the sweat and the blood that goes behind that journey is usually not talked about. And that's what we like to talk about in this segment on Friday Feature on Money Mindset, because that journey is possible for everyone, but not everyone's willing to pay the price, and you have. So I want you to talk us through the journey. How did it start for me? What led you on to having a business? How did you make it a success? And then how did you exit? How did you sell and, at a profit? And how did you, sort of move away from this? So just talk us through your journey.
Sure. I think, one of the things that I noticed about myself really early on was I never really kind of fell into the employee or ownership mindset. I've always kind of had an ownership mindset,
right.
Regardless, even if I didn't really realize it. And I think a lot of that just comes from my background in sports and athletics and kind of taking accountability and ownership for my own piece of the puzzle. So I'm really used to being, a section of a team or an important factor on the team, but I'm not the whole team. And that kind of mindset really framed the way I do business. And like I say, I didn't really necessarily even realize how natural that came to me until I really started getting experience in the business world and seeing maybe other people struggle with that concept a little bit more. So for me, even when I was on my quote unquote employee journey, I was preparing myself for this journey. I was trying to learn how these types of operations work. I was trying to assess if I thought I had enough skill set to run a type of operation like this. So, even my major corporate jobs just gave me more confidence in running large teams and seeing large teams perform difficult tasks and complicated tasks and things like that. So everything that I've done as far as my resume goes is just like the same as my college experience. It's just another course or job or workshop or, another opportunity for me to learn skills that I can apply to kind of my overall strategy in business.
Oh, that makes complete sense. And I love that. I think far too many people, are living in the future. They want to get to this place and then negate the opportunities that are present in the current wherever they are, current circumstances. And I love what you said, because your job can actually prepare you for your entrepreneurial journey if that's what you want to pursue. And even if you are not sure about being an entrepreneur, any place you are, you can acquire skills. We can help you as a person, and then those skills may help you to have the confidence to run a business. But far too many people, think, okay, now I like the security and whatever. They equate the job with the money, the security, rather than actually acquiring skills. And one of my favorite authors, Robert Kiyosaki, talks about this, that you should never get a job for money. You should get a job for skills, to learn certain skill sets. And I personally have always done that in my life. When I was going through my various legal careers, I picked up skills which helped me in my various businesses later on, with the mindset like I always knew I was going to be a business woman at some point in my life, and therefore I was acquiring skills. And it looks like you were doing something similar. You were learning to see, how can I learn from here, and which eventually would pay off with dividends when I'm running my own business, which is fantastic. How did you go ahead?
No, I was going to say 100%. I mean, I even go as far as to say, a job to me is almost like a paid scholarship. And because I was on scholarship, I can kind of relate the two. And I literally get paid to learn. That's how I look at it. So I've never had a job, especially when I'm in my 18s to, let's say, 25, that I thought, I'm just going to stay here for the rest of my life. I knew that was a placeholder or a temporary situation. I knew, I would be here for months to years at max. And when I can look at it like that, to me, it's like, okay, well, how do I kind of graduate from where I am now to have a higher skill set than when I started this? And that, to me, that's what a resume should be. Is it should just be a continuous building of your skill sets and the tools that you use to, make strategic decisions for business, basically.
100%. So I want you to compare yourself to your peers. How do you think, because that's a great advantage, by the way, and I love that you just said that, but that will make you a very distinct character compared to your peers, compared to people around you. How does that mindset, which is a growth mindset, compared to your peers who have not necessarily have that growth mindset, they have more of a fixed mindset. Okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to have that, and that's at 2.4, get married and do this, and the narrative that we're fed when as kids, I think till this day and age as well. How were you different compared to people around you?
Well, I mean, I think growing up in a small town and kind of always knowing that, like, you were in a small town and there's a big city and there's a kind of a bigger world out there. It really kind of just framed my mindset in, like, I have to grow forever if I want to really kind of be somebody in life. I don't really have the option of thinking that, I'm born a silver spoon person that can just kind of coast through life. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, kind of thinking that you can get to this plateau and then you will just get a raise every year and you can just kind of kick back and just put your learning and your intensity and kind of your ambitions on cruise control. And I've never really felt like that. I think sports definitely plays a big role in that. I had a strength coach to say, you're either getting stronger or you're getting weaker. So
yeah, you never stay. Yeah. I mean, Tony Robbins said that there's no such thing as status quo. You either get improving or you're going down.
Exactly. And because it's intention based, right? Yeah. And it's hard to intend to stay the same on that quote unquote razor's edge that you're trying to balance on. It's a lot easier to keep moving forward and keep having goals and things that you're trying to improve about yourself. So when you look at it like that, I think the hardest part is just aligning that journey with your passions and with your kind of business interests. And I've been fortunate enough to do that. I didn't even realize I was going on that journey when I started my company. But as I've grown and kind of put myself in these situations, I see, like, okay, my business is somewhat aligned with my passions and with my beliefs. And I really do try to start new businesses that kind of even align with that a little bit more so that I can really focus on my own unique growth path and overlap that with my business. So I never look at anything like it can stay the same. Every business I start, I preach that this is a living, growing organism. It's like a child that it has to grow every year. It has to mature. It has to be working on new projects, new streams of revenue, whatever that may be. It's an ongoing process of improvement. It's not a stagnant thing.
Completely agree. And when you were saying this, I was thinking of my own businesses. There has to be an iteration at every level for your business as well. The business has to grow as you do, and it's not an extension of you. It's its own identity, but it's guided by you. You're the leader, and it needs to grow. And I was thinking, there's so many businesses which disintegrate not because of lack of thought or lack of, the idea is great behind it. It's just there's lack of innovation. There's lack of that iteration. That it needs to grow. It needs to evolve. It needs to move ahead. And I've seen this online and offline space, because I was online on the online space. I've now moved more towards the brick and mortar offline space businesses. And I see so many businesses, which are great businesses, but they haven't innovated over the last 20, 30 years. And they are just going on. And I think, where's the growth? How have you not expanded? You have such a brilliant product. Why haven't you expanded? Why haven't you grown? But it's up to the business owners for them. If they're not growing, how is the business supposed to grow? So I think your business is a reflection of who you are. And if the leader is not willing to grow, then the business won't grow either. So I think that's a great way for you to look upon your business. It's its own entity. It's my baby, but in order for it to grow, I have to grow. And all the businesses that I've seen successful have these amazing leaders who have this growth mindset, who are constantly learning, who are constantly reading, who are constantly innovating, and just bringing out the best version of themselves. And that reflects in the business as well. Coming back to you, talk us through your childhood. So you said you were into sports. So what was childhood like for you?
I think my childhood was a little more intense than most people's childhood. I grew up in a small town. I spent pretty much, 10 to 12 hours a day, every day outside, if not more. I grew up in one of those towns like, don't come inside type of deal. And, you go outside and play, and you come in when the sun goes down, or really before 10 or 11 o'clock really is kind of how it used to work. But I also had a military dad. So, my dad was not very lenient when it came to kid schedules versus adult schedules. So, since I was 5 years old, I was waking up at 5:30, 6 o'clock and doing workouts in the morning. And then I had my chores. And if I got everything done, then I could earn my quote unquote free time. And, I'm grateful for that kind of stuff, because it did instill a sense of discipline in me to prepare me for things. So even in college, I could see other people struggle with waking up at 5 o'clock to work out. And to me, it was, that was the norm if you wanted to be an elite athlete. There was no such thing as not doing that if you want to perform at this level. If you wanted to go back and play recreationally, that's totally fine. You don't have to get up at 5:30 in the morning and work out. So just having some of the discipline in my life to match what my, let's say, high ambitions might be, especially early on, is extremely helpful. So, I've always been kind of a no excuse guy from a very young age, and the person that, when everyone's running, I'm the guy like, hey, come on, team, we can keep doing this. I've always been kind of that motivator and team builder, if you will, ever since I was young.
So tell us, how much do you think your childhood, the discipline that you were given from your father, which at the time you probably thought, my God, he's harsh and he's God knows what, right? But now you can look back and appreciate and see it as a gift I believe it's a gift, by the way. So you can see it as a gift. How much do you think that influenced in you becoming successful now? I would like to get your take on that.
I think that's it's a debatable question for some people. My childhood was intense, and quite a few people would say, it was maybe too intense for a child. But, I don't believe so. I think that we coddle a lot of people nowadays and don't prepare them for reality.
Yeah.
So, I like being overly prepared for reality. I'm used to that through sports. Like in sports, they break you on purpose. Your coach will tell you to do something that he knows you don't want to do. He knows that you think is wrong, doesn't have logic to it. You do it to break that kind of mental bridge or blocker that you have in your brain that stops you from just going above and beyond for the team. And I've always been able to do that. So, I think that's kind of a military mindset where it's like, you throw yourself on the grenade, you sacrifice for the bigger cause. And I've always been able to visualize that bigger cause and see that. And, things in my childhood with sports allowed me to kind of run through all these micro battles and challenges early on, and having the discipline to win, lose, regardless, get up the next day and get better. I think that's what really set me up for business success more than anything. It doesn't really matter what happens in the game. The next day we're getting better.
Yeah. When you were saying this, I was thinking about, my childhood, and most people who are, widely successful. And I think, then I was comparing that to, the kind of lifestyle and upbringing I've given to my kids. My kids are mollycoddled as well. I put my hands up, and I've been, I think I've been too soft. I think they may not agree. But my childhood was very tough. But I think that was a positive aspect about me. When people say to me, "Oh, you're very strong," I don't have an option. I had to be strong. You know, with my childhood, I grew up in, you know, what would be what you would call, guys would call ghetto or whatever, you know, in East London of London, East London. You know, and you know, with my brother playing out and whatever else. That made me such a, you know, my mind was so focused on success, so focused on studying, so focused on making sure I got out there and I changed my life and my trajectory was completely different. Yeah, it's when I look back, it's abnormal the things that I've done, but there was no way around. There was no negotiation. So I was so strict on myself, but my life was very hard.
Yeah.
And now I look back and I think people who had a softer upbringing did not have the character to be able to build the kind of life that I've built. So as a child, I know that some other people may see your child as intense. I think that was the biggest gift your father gave you, because it enabled you to become this really, you know, physically strong is one thing, but mentally strong. And that enabled you to have the character and the courage to become successful and have the you know, courage to take decisions and the gumption to stick by them. That is such a crucial skill that I see with people. Leaders are able to make those difficult decisions and have the gumption to stick with them. Weak people make these decisions very poorly and they change often. And this requires a certain kind of character, a certain kind of mindset. And that can be developed later on as well. But I think it's usually very helpful if you get it early on, through good times and bad times. I'm not saying either way. And when the things happen, I remember when I think my life, you know, the way it was at the time, it was harsh, it was horrible. And I remember, you know, people think, oh, you need therapy, you know, whatever. I think that's modern take on it. I think that was, for me, my gift. I mean, I'm also dyslexic, so I had to study extra hard to get the grades. Again, I see dyslexia as a gift. And I think with you have a similar mindset. Like, I did it and it helped me and it made me who I am, and look where I am today. And I think that's fantastic. I think that's the thing that we should be telling people is, you know, discipline is a form of self-love too. But when you're a child, that discipline comes from your parents, not from yourself. You can't discipline yourself as a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, you know, 7-year-old. But parents can do that for you. I'm curious to see, do you have any children yourself?
I do. I do. I have a son that's.
And what kind of parent are you to your son?
Well, he actually just joined the Navy. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he and his mom and I are not together, so we have somewhat of a distant relationship, especially compared to my childhood.
Okay.
But I mean, in general, you know, I think it's the same. You know, my dad's still quite involved in my life and even my son's life. So, you know, the same structure is in place. It's a lot harder to enforce nowadays than it is,
100%.
during my childhood. You know, there was no social media when I was growing up. There was no real internet. You know, I remember being the first person in my family to know how to use a computer. So like that's, you know,
same
different. Yeah, that's a different that's a different challenge to kind of try to tackle right now. And I think every parent is really struggling with it. I think that, you know, society in general is struggling with kind of preparing young people for the harshness of reality, especially when you get kind of induced into a fantasy by social media and these apps that people use like that. So in general, I think the trials and tribulations that you go through, whether they're, you know, coming from a poverty-stricken neighborhood or you know, not having as much kind of access to resources when you're growing up, or it comes from sports or whatever that is, I think getting those lessons kind of early as possible, avoiding as much physical danger as you can during that process. So you will get bumps and bruises, but you don't want to, let's say, scar and injure yourself for life to where you're traumatized from it. But I think going through that before you get to adulthood, especially before you start your own business, is something that is kind of not really given enough credit. I think most businesses fail because people haven't gone through enough things and they are not ready for the kind of the cause of every single day to be dealing with problems, and you can just feel bombarded with problems. But that is what it's like to be a business owner. You're responsible for every problem that comes up, and kind of dealing with obstacles and overcoming them and losing and winning some of those smaller battles is kind of the task of every single day. And I don't think most people are ready for that.
I agree. I definitely agree. I think a lot of people come in with the romantic idea that I'm going to start this business and it's going to go really well and so forth. And they're not mentally prepared for the roller coaster ride that it is. And the ups are high, but the lows are low. And there are times, and it's a very lonely place. And somebody said this to me, and I've known this myself as well. that the higher up you go, the closer your circle becomes, and the less you're able to share with people, because people are not able to understand what you're going through and the pressures on your head and so forth, and you have to deal with that, on your own. And if your shoulders are not strong enough, if you're not mentally that strong enough, that's when you collapse, and people have burnouts and they collapse and so forth. And then there's mental health and mental health issues as well. I mean, mental health has gone through the roof nowadays. When you're growing up, what did we hear about mental health forever? And now every other child is going through therapy. I'm like, oh my God, right? Seriously, imagine the amount of therapy that you and I would have gone through, But I'm not disrespecting mental health. Absolutely, there's a need for it. But I think we are too soft. And I agree with you. If someone has not dealt with the hardships of life, they struggle when they come across the problems and the hardships of business. And every business will test your resilience, and whether you like it or not. And if you don't have the courage to go through the dark times, the low time periods, that's when people collapse, and that's what happens. I think that recently, especially when I've been in the online space, certainly people, these 20 years old and 20-year-olds, they became these multi-millionaires and so forth. But it was short-lived. They lost it very quickly because they weren't able to handle the low points, because again, they just had success so quickly, they didn't able to, see the other side. So just wrapping this up, what advice would you give, Chad, someone who's, who is thinking of going into business, or is currently business, is going through a low moment and thinks, it's okay for Gull and it's okay for Chad, you came out the other end, but I've given this business my all and I'm struggling and I don't think I can keep up. What advice would you give to someone like that?
I think you kind of, you spoke on exactly what, the reason I wrote the book, and the reason I kind of tried to culminate everything that I've learned thus far is really kind of preparing yourself for the mental challenge of what's to come. My book is titled Preparing for Battle, because I do think business and entrepreneurship is a battle.
100%.
You are conquering on a daily basis. You're trying to grow and, take market space, and there's never a day in which you can't be doing more for your business. So you're either doing more yourself, which requires more effort and energy from you personally, or you're having to build resources and teams to come in and fulfill that space. But there's really never a day in which the business doesn't kind of need more energy than it did the day before. And, I think a lot of people fall short in that aspect. I would advise people to really focus on self-awareness. So I am a huge advocate for therapy. I think people use therapy as a crutch. I think they can.
Agreed. I think it's not therapy that's the issue. It's where they use it as a crutch.
Exactly. And I think I myself even been to therapy, but I use therapy. I have goals when I go to therapy. So I remember, I mentioned at the beginning, I started a salon, or I started a business with my girlfriend. I started a nail salon at the same time I started my fitness company. And communicating with my team for the nail salon was not the same as communicating with my team for the kettlebell company. I could not talk to them the same. I couldn't request the same amount of effort. And it became quite frustrating for me, because I was used to working in construction, used to working with, let's say, groups of guys that had some sense of camaraderie. There was no really cattiness, or that was kind of frowned upon, let's say, where I had to learn how to deliver things differently and communicate differently. And I learned that kind of stuff in therapy. So I give huge credit to my therapist, because I would ask her, how do I say this in a way that doesn't get perceived as this? And going to therapy with those types of goals, I think, is tremendous for people, and you can get a long way, especially business professionals. I think we think everybody can be like us, but I don't think everybody can and wants to be like us. So meeting people where they are is a requirement for strong leadership as well, and understanding what will get maximum value out of people versus, what will cause conflict, I think, is a skill set as well. So I use therapy for that kind of stuff, but I think in general, you have to be self-aware enough to want to work on yourself and to want to improve who you are. And I think a lot of people are scared of that, the idea of like losing your own personal identity and you not knowing who you are anymore. And I don't think you are. Like I'm not the same person from 10 years ago.
And why should you be?
I'm extremely proud of that. And I will remind you if you need me to that, hey, like I've grown since the last time you've seen me. And I think that's a leadership mindset. That should be the mindset that you try to demonstrate to your employees and to your team, so that everyone has an opportunity to kind of take on more responsibilities and grow with the company and not just kind of get left behind. So I would challenge everybody to look at life as a kind of an ever changing and growing experience. It's not something that should stay stagnant. Stagnation should feel kind of dangerous to you in the sense like, am I about to get laid off because I don't really, I don't really have a purpose around here, and I'm not really helping with the growth. So, I would encourage people to lean into that a little bit more.
100%. I agree with absolutely everything you said. We need to, I believe in healing your traumas, by the way. So in case somebody thinks I'm talking like to you about healing, not at all. Counseling, absolutely. Healing your traumas and working through it is part of the idea as a mindset coach as well. Absolutely, 100%. You should look at your traumas and heal through it, but don't use it as an excuse to keep back. Don't use it as an excuse to not grow. Don't use it as an excuse to keep yourself small. That's the point I'm making. And allow yourself to go through the uncomfortable stage and grow, exactly as you said, because you're either growing or you're disintegrating. It's one or the other. And a leader needs to be able to converse at every level. And meet people where they are, because that's a sign of a true leader. I completely agree with that. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap this one up. We have to have you back on Money Talkies. We'll continue the conversation there, Chad. But for now, tell everybody, how can we connect with you? Where can we find you on the internet?
I'm pretty much everywhere, like everyone nowadays. So Real Chad Price on Instagram, Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn as Chad Price. You can find out quite a bit more about me on my website, chadprice.com. You can find the book on there on Amazon, Preparing for Battle, but you can get through it to everything from chadprice.com.
Wonderful. Now, if you are listening to us on the podcast, the links that Chad just mentioned will be in the show notes. And if you're watching us on YouTube, down below in the description section, we'll have all the links for him as well. Go check him out and see how you can get familiar with him, read his book to see how that can support you in your journey. Well, thank you so much for being our guest today, Chad. We'll have to have you back, but today, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was very nice meeting you.
And thank you for listening to me and Chad today. I will be back with another amazing guest on another Friday Future, finding out how they change their life by changing the mindset. Until the next time we meet, this is Gull signing off. Take care and bye for now.